in this cultural context, you have enough of the worst of kind of Southern alt-right Christianity that is a massive turnoff, in particular for young people, whether it's white nationalism or whatever. Then you have the arts here, so you have artistic people tend to be more open-minded, creative. They don't like rules, they don't like boxes, which is part of the gift they bring to the world and part of the temptation. It's God's gift through them, and it's the enemy's temptation to them. Oh. Because life without constraints is anarchy and lies and confusion. So there's enough people in the arts and exposed to secular culture, and they just don't like the kind of restricting nature of, call it orthodoxy or whatever. And then there's still enough cultural Christianity here that people can view progressivism as this nice, shiny thing where you can kind of sleep with whoever you want to sleep with and just be nice to people that have different sexual orientations and just not be judgmental and get along. It has this veneer, which isn't real, but it has really good PR. And there's enough cultural Christianity here that people think there's a future there. And I'm living in it. And let me tell you, it's not beautiful up close. There's some good things about it, but it's not beautiful up close.
It's like the way it came into, I think, church leaders was 10, 15 years ago through the missional movement, where there was the great thinkers who started to deconstruct the kind of Sunday-centric, attractional, church is all about lights and stage and getting more people and almost consumeristic approach to church. They started to deconstruct that with the Bible and say, like, that isn't scriptural, that's not the future, this isn't reaching Gen X, this isn't reaching millennials. But then something shifted and people started not just deconstructing church structure, but deconstructing orthodoxy. And at that point, it was, you're off to the races. And my pastoral experience is that progressive Christianity, not for all people, but for most, is a stopover on the way to post-Christianity. Because it can't hold any kind of robust discipleship, because it has no ethical stance against the world. So you're just sucked in.
Talk to where Scripture fits into that. I mean, in terms of orthodoxy, what's the first, for a pastor who's trying to lead a congregation and they're having some of these conversations over coffee, I mean, as a leader, what are you listening for in the conversation that helps you know, hey, this person might be starting to be discipled by a different vision that is not our vision?
Well, everything is about power and authority for millennials and Gen Z. And so I think the short version is just, for many young Christians, Scripture is no longer their authority.
I feel like if we're following Jesus well, both the left and the right will be angry with us. Maybe that's just my own psychosis, I don't know. But yeah, I think I grew up in a conservative culture, more on the right, and I can tell you everything that's wrong with it and everything that's right about it.
Right.
And the older I got, the less it worked for me. Mm-hmm. And I saw a lot of my friends, then the pendulum goes to the other side, and step out of that kind of a church expression into the progressive vision, which usually means stepping out of church, because progressive theology can't seem to keep church around it. And so I would, with a lot of humility, argue that progressive theology kills church long-term. It kills faith long-term. It kills discipleship to Jesus long-term, especially if you don't even believe that the writings of the New Testament and the four Gospels are in any way, shape, or form authoritative. If you're where, Bell is, or something like smart, thinking, well-written person, but who doesn't believe that the New Testament is Scripture, doesn't believe that to follow Jesus you need to live under the authority of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. That's a whole other world that I think takes you not only past church, I think it takes you past discipleship to Jesus. So what I'm fighting for, and maybe it's idealistic, but is a third option C, a kind of third way that transcends the liberal conservative divide, that still takes the Bible. A lot of this has to do with how you read the Bible. That still takes the Bible very seriously as scripture, but also as literature, and is open to hard conversations and to nuance and reading the Bible in context and all of that, but is at the end of the day still really serious about following the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth and the claim that he is Lord.
When people deconstruct, most of the time there's something there that needs to be deconstructed. So there's a type of deconstruction that is where people critique kind of the culture of the church based on the Bible. And this is what Jesus did. Like Jesus did this. This is the Sermon on the Mount. You've heard it said, but I say to you, right? You've heard it said, love, your neighbor, but hate your enemies. That hate your enemies part isn't in the text. You've added that on with your nationalism and your anger and your fear. And so Jesus is deconstructing church norms in his day with the Bible, saying, you think this is, you Christians or you church people think this is what Scripture says. This is the deconstruction of the Old Testament prophets before Jesus. It's the deconstruction of Martin Luther and Zwingli and Calvin and the Reformers. It's the deconstruction of, there's a healthy part of deconstruction where basically the world has corrupted the church and people take the Bible to critique the worldliness of the church. But what we're living through right now is where people take the world and they use kind of the culture of the world to critique the Bible. So it's a backwards kind of thing. So people come to the Bible, come to the way of Jesus with prior moral assumptions where they have Genesis 3, redefined good and evil, whether it's around sexuality or any number of issues, for themselves, and then Scripture doesn't line up or the tradition of the church doesn't line up, and so then it's deconstructed. Yeah, I think big picture, on one level, like Christianity, so to speak, built the West, but the West has always been a mix of, Christian and first pagan, and then more recently secular ideas. So the Christendom model, It was never a Christian society. We were never a Christian nation, but it's always a mix. And there was a general consensus that would move you in the general direction of a Judeo-Christian kind of ethical social vision, with a few glaring exceptions, particularly around justice. But I think what we're experiencing right now, and Portland and other cities like that are just an accelerated version, is just cultural Christianity is burning up, And America has been later to that game than Australia or England or some of these countries that secularized a little bit earlier for all sorts of different reasons. But I think that's what we're experiencing. It's just cultural Christianity is gone. It has been gone in Portland for if it ever was there. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if Portland is post-Christian or because I'm not sure it ever was, Because it's end of the Oregon Trail. It doesn't have a rich spiritual history like New York does or Boston does or Philadelphia has. So, there's every city's a little bit different, but I think that's where we're at. Yeah. It's burning up. All that's left is a resilient, super robust discipleship to Jesus.